say this every week, every month. Our themes are broad on purpose. I love that they're broad because we get to interpret them broadly, I think, which makes for a much more robust dialogue and conversation. Pride is a fascinating word. As I was thinking about this, to be proud is both this thing that is celebrated and also a thing that is slightly vilified. It's sort of like any ingredient. Too much of it has an adverse effect, and too little of it has an adverse effect in the opposite direction. We often hear that pride comes before the fall, and we understand why that's true and understand that to be true. But also, you know, as a kid, all I ever wanted to hear was that my dad was proud of me. But I'm also Nigerian, so I just wasn't gonna get that. And so it's this thing that we both want, right? And also a thing that we understand can be a tripping hazard, effectively, for us in life. But I think when we sort of boil it down, pride is this beautiful and powerful affirmation of authenticity. It gives us the grace and capacity to show up as ourselves. And I think we see that often, and this is a segue into our speaker, we see that often in situations where marginalized people are vilified for their pride, because to be proud is to own who you are. And to own who you are is to walk in the space, in the world, in full confidence of who you are and what you have to offer the world. And that's another sort of interesting facet of pride that we see in a lot of power dynamics, is the effort to quell pride, because to have pride is, again, to be in community and to be sharing that part of yourself authentically with those around you. That's why again, we were staring at these themes. Who do we have speak? Dee is someone who I met through another friend in the photographer and artist community. And I had actually encountered her work long before I met her. Dee is a photographer, a storyteller, an artist, a community named sort of the visual voice for her people. Grew up in Southeast DC. And the first piece of Dee's work that I think I ever saw, I don't think I've told you this, so make eye contact with you, was your work on the 12 O'Clock Boys, and the sort of photo essay. It's actually quite insulting to call it a photo essay. This incredible body of work that documents this subculture of DC that I think most people, if they're being honest, would understand as being a nuisance and not an asset to their community. But there's something about the way that Dee not only inhabited that community, because it is her community, but also shared the story and the work and the love for that community that completely flipped on my head how I operate in this city that I had come to call home. And at that point, I'd called it home for 5 years. And suddenly it was about, okay, again, it's not about looking at the thing and saying, this is frustrating, or why is this a thing, but asking the questions and being curious. And Dee presented this opportunity for me and audiences all over the world who read the story and saw this documentary, to be curious about this subculture. And suddenly what became a nuisance, or what was once a nuisance in my mind, became this beautiful expression of a community that I'm not a part of, but I'm now adjacent to and I can respect. To me, that is this encompassing of not just pride in self and work, but also pride in community. And I'm very excited to introduce Dee Dwyer to our stage to share us a little bit about that today. Come on. Yeah. You want to hold it, or you want to put it on?
Get situated here. How's everyone doing? Was not expecting this crowd at 8 in the morning, but here we are. Mic check? Okay, cool. Well, thank you for the lovely intro, Obi. That was amazing. My name is Dee Dwyer, and as Obi stated earlier, I am from Southeast DC. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Southeast DC. Great. Raise your hand if you've ever spent time in Southeast DC. I'm not talking about drove through. I'm talking about like experience the culture. I love it. Okay, all right, I got my people in here. So I am from Southeast DC in a community called Chopper City. And it's called Chopper City for a reason. It has high crime, it's under-resourced, all of the above, right? Before I go into the heart of my work, I'm gonna go into who I am as a human being so you can understand my subjects, why I photograph, what I photograph, and how I do it. So, growing up, I did not have access to art at all. I didn't have art in the school. We wasn't introduced to the primary colors until actually I went to college. But I always had a creative spirit, and my mom always rewarded me with the little Marshall art kits for being good around the house, because I was never a good student. I was considered one of those students. I don't know, do we have any educators in the building at all? So I was considered an at-risk student. Many of my teachers spoke down on me. I was not encouraged to, find who I was. I was always the rebellious kid, the kid that broke the laws, the kid that, I've been arrested multiple times, and just, the kid that you kind of just write off as someone who wasn't going to be anyone. Look at me now. Yes. So I have a few talking points, because again, it's 8 in the morning. Well, it's 9 now. I am not a morning person. I was also the kid that was always late for school. Couldn't do it. I'm also a mom of 2. I'm a single mom of 2. A lot of people don't know that about me. A lot of people don't even know that I'm a mom, because, I look good and all of that. I'm a director, I'm a producer, a writer, a journalist, all of the above. I do it all, the average woman, black woman out here. I'm fascinated by the misunderstood. As Obi stated earlier, I spend a lot of time documenting the 12 o'clock boys. You may know them as the bikers, the ATV riders, the guys that come through, I call it a parade style, how they, come through the streets. I gravitate towards that because that's the roots of who I am, right? I got into photography. It's a long story. At first, I thought that I was going to be a criminal defense lawyer. I went to school to study the law, got bored with that. And the reason why I went to school was because to study the law, to become a criminal defense lawyer, is because a lot of my friends, they were, arrested for petty crimes. What hit me hard was when my boyfriend at the time, I was a teenager, my boyfriend and his friends were arrested for conspiracy, hit with RICO charges, and it was just ridiculous. For just being a group of people, that hung around the neighborhood. They did break a few laws, but they were not a gang. And that motivated me to go to college. I could have went to Howard. Do we have any HU people in here? Okay. And I had to state that because at the end of this talk, I'm going to make an announcement and everything's going to come full circle. So I could have went to Howard, but I decided not to go. I decided to go to Miami to go to college because, number one, I've never lived outside of my community. Rarely did I ever travel outside of Southeast. I wanted to know what the world was, and I knew if I would have stayed local, I would have dropped the ball. I probably wouldn't be here today. When I went to college, when I moved to Miami, I learned other ways of thinking. I was able to expand my horizons and learn that you don't have to walk down the street looking over your shoulder. Of course, Miami does have, communities where things could get really real. And I've visited those communities while there. But I grew as an artist. I got bored with trying to study political science and being on a college mock trial. I got bored with that. I knew that I was supposed to be out creating. So shout out to Spike Lee, because Spike Lee motivated me. I respected how Spike Lee represented Brooklyn, New York to the fullest. I love how he told those authentic, real stories. And I said I wanted to do that for Southeast. Another thing that motivated me was every time I would tell people that I was from Washington, D.C., they would automatically say, oh, the White House. They would automatically talk about the Capitol. And me being from east of the river, Southeast D.C., that irritated me. That irritated my soul. I mean, I was just so upset because in my mind, I said, this is how the world views Washington, D.C., And us who is from Washington, D.C., the original D.C. natives, we care nothing about the White House, the Capitol, the president. They don't come visit us. They don't pour into our communities. So for me, a light bulb went off, and I said, wow, people do not even know that we exist in Southeast DC. So I'm going to do what Spike Lee is doing for Brooklyn. I'm going to be that for Southeast. So that was my mindset during that time. That still is my mindset. Left school, left traditional college, went to art school to study filmmaking. And while I was there, I was able to build with some amazing creators. I met my best friend. I'll go into that later. My best friend is actually from DC as well. I met her while I was there. And she was one of my biggest motivation. She studied her craft. She took her craft seriously. And again, how I was raised to not really take school as seriously, but she studied her craft. Everyone respected Bree. Her name is Bree Monet. Everyone respected her, and I respected her, right? So I started to study her. Fast forward to me starting to get in my groove while I was in college, and I ended up pregnant with my eldest child. So in my mind, I became devastated because I said, Dad, I thought I was on my way out the hood. I thought that I was about to, become this woman version of Spike Lee, but now I'm pregnant. I thought it was the end of the world. I truly did. I moved back home because that's where the father of my children lived. Left everything, dropped out of college, had my baby, got married, and I became a housewife. I became a housewife, y'all. And then let me click through some of these things. I forgot I had this. This photo is actually by my daughter, Ziggy D. This is my childhood home in Chopper City. Oh, yeah, I forgot I had this clicker. I was like, something else is supposed to be happening here. But I moved back and I became this housewife, right? And I remember me just thinking to myself, I love my baby, I love my husband at the time, but this is not what I'm supposed to do, I just knew that this was not what I was supposed to do. But I roll with it because, of course, you have your family, your friends, and they're looking at you as if, this is such a beautiful family. Fast forward to my best friend. At the time, she was not my best friend, by the way. She did not like me in college, although I admire her. But she did not like me because I was a hipster. I smoked a lot of weed. I was always late on set. It was just, I would take her actors, take them on South Beach, and get high and come back on set, and it was a mess. But I respected her professionalism as a young creator. Came back, she had graduated from college, we ran into each other, and we began to slowly build a friendship. And as I was a single mom, I'm jumping ahead here. As I was a housewife, I would hang out with her and another mutual friend. I remember them working on a film. It was like a Brazilian film. And they had invited me to go to Brazil to go do behind-the-scenes photography for their film. And I remember me just telling them, I can't do this. I'm a mom. I can't leave my children. At this time, I had just had my second child, my son Giannis. I was just I can't leave my children, can't leave my husband. I have housewife duties. And I remember them just being very persistent, calling me every single day saying, Dee, you have to come. Because they had saw some of my photography work that I took, just of them and the kids, over the years. And I remember them just saying, Dee, you have to come, you have to come, you have to come. Finally, I gave in, went to Salvador, Brazil to do behind-the-scenes photography. This was in 2015. When I went, my eyes opened. And I went doing carnival. I don't know, have anybody ever gone to Salvador, Brazil, or just Brazil? Doing carnival. Again, I went doing carnival. So when I went, it was just, I was able to see so much and learn about a totally different culture. We went to the favelas, and we never got any sleep, by the way. And I took my camera everywhere. And I remember coming back home, and I remember unpacking, and I remember looking at my children, I remember looking at my husband at the time, and I was just like, I'm not about to be in this house. Like, baby, I'm outside, okay? I'm outside. It's a world out here. It's beautiful. And I remember just looking through my body of work and, just being blown away of what I came back with. By the way, that natural sunlight in Salvador, Brazil, oh my God. It just took my photography to a whole nother level. And I remember telling my husband, I don't want to just be in a house. I want to be outside with my camera. And he was, a traditional Rasta man. No shade to the Rasta community. Please, I love going to Jamaica, I ain't got time. But I remember him just not really being as supportive as I needed him to be. As a photographer, how many photographers do we have in the building? Raise your hand. Or, as an artist, you have to be outside. You have to experience the world, right, to get motivation to create. And I remember my girls, always inviting me out to shows. And, I remember just having to be out in the world. And it would cause a lot of fights, a lot of arguments. And I got to a point where I tried to suppress my hunger to create. And that lasted for about 2 years. Actually, no, it lasted for about a year. And I just remember, me feeling like I was about to go crazy. And I just felt as though if I do not jump on my talent, if I do not chase my dreams, I was going to do something to myself. I just felt as though, not necessarily suicide, but I just felt as though I was going to become a hermit in life, I was always happy, energetic, fun, but I remember just slowly dying inside and suffocating. And I said to myself, it's either me or him. So I decided to just leave that whole situation. And when I left that situation, I lost everything. And I remember that one of my same friends at the time who motivated me to go to Brazil, she called me up and she was like, you want to be an art teacher? I know you have to support the kids. Do you want to be an art teacher? And I said, sure. I'll do anything at this point, right? Because at this point, I'm losing financial support for the kids and I. So I became an art teacher. And I became an art teacher in a under-resourced community where I taught art, and I also incorporated a lot of photography in my classes. And for me, the kids were pouring into me just as much as I was pouring into them. I don't even know if they know at the time, but they literally kept me sane. Because no matter what I was going through in my personal life, I had to walk into that classroom and bring my A game. And I was also learning about my craft as I was teaching. So I lost my home, I lost my car, I had to move back to Southeast DC. I was still teaching. And this was 2017. I was still teaching. And when I moved back home to my parents' house, the kids and I, we had to share one bedroom, one bed, right? And for me, it was bittersweet because although on the one hand, I had lost everything, but I felt as though I had came back to my roots. My parents, they lived, they still live in the heart of Southeast DC, not too far from where I grew up at. And I remember me, at this point I had transferred to a school a couple of miles up the street from my family's home. So I lived, worked, and literally played in the same area. And I remember every day I would have my camera with me and I would just photograph the community. not really understanding what I wanted to do with my photography, not really understanding the impact that I would create in the future, but I just did it because I loved it. I did it because every time my people saw me with my camera, they felt seen, they felt loved, you know? And to me, again, it was literally my therapy. I wasn't going through therapy at the time during my divorce. I had a really bad divorce. And it just kept me sane, right? So during that time, I would go to portfolio reviews. Has anyone ever been to a portfolio review? It's intense, and it's nerve-wracking, and it's annoying. But I would go, and I would show people my work that I took, like photographs that I took in Jamaica, or that I took, from Brazil, and I'll splash in a little bit of Southeast DC. And honestly speaking, most editors will skip over my work from Southeast DC. They'll go to my works from other places. So I thought at the time, okay, well, I have to travel in order to become a successful photographer, right? It wasn't until I met one editor at the Washington Post, shout out to Dudley Brooks, Black man. He looked at my work, and he was skipping through, the work that I had created in Brazil. He skipped through the work that I created in Jamaica. He skipped through the work that I created in other cities. And I remember him looking at my work in Southeast. And I remember him saying, actually the two boys at the top that's pointing at the camera, that was like one of the first photographs that I took where I started to understand the importance of photography. And I remember him looking through those photos, and he said to me, this is what you need to focus on. I can tell that this is where you're comfortable at this time. DC is going through gentrification. DC is still going through gentrification, unfortunately. And I remember him saying, you need to document where you're from. You need to document your backyard, because no one's going to tell that story like you. And hearing this from Dudley Brooks, one of the top editors at the Washington Post, to me, he validated me. Because that's what I wanted to do anyways, to be honest. So I took my camera, and I just had fun with it. I went around to all the different communities. I photographed everyone. I would try to pitch my work to editors. I did not know what I was doing. Sometimes I still don't know what I'm doing because, it's all in, relationships, right? And I like to meet people in person. I hate sending those emails to people, hi, how are you? No, I hate it. Just meet me outside. So I remember just documenting my people and trying to get my work seen, trying to get my work published. And it wasn't until 2020, that's when all of a sudden, everybody had Dee Dwyer's email. Everyone had my contact information. Everyone wanted to work with me. And the reason being was because of the protesters. So I owe a lot of my success to the protesters because they didn't like how they were being represented, during the uprisings. They didn't like how they were being represented by the media. And they shut out the white gaze. They shut out white storytellers. I literally witnessed them putting up umbrellas in front of white photographers' cameras because they just wasn't getting the story right. They glorified the violence that made the headlines. And I remember the protesters saying, we want Black storytellers. And at that time, I was just out on the front lines just like everyone else was, because this is important. Like, we're fighting for my rights, our rights as Black people. And I would post the work online, and I guess, other people were reposting it, and editors were able to see my work and learn about me that way. After a while, I started getting all these emails, started collaborating with people. I had transitioned out of being a teacher to working at DC's WAMU. Have you all heard of either? I had transitioned to work with them as a visual journalist through a fellowship. So literally, it was already in alignment like during the beginning of the pandemic, I got accepted into this fellowship called Report for America, where they connected me to DCS. And that wasn't supposed to start until June, but due to the uprisings, the pandemic and everything literally just happened how I guess it was supposed to happen. Because I had left my teaching job in June. And we all know, the uprising started like the end of May. So I transitioned to them, and I remember just us having so many meetings on how we're supposed to report on the uprisings. And I remember me just being so frustrated, and just, trying to understand, like, why can't you guys just put humanity first, And again, shout out to DCS, WMU, because I appreciate them for just being open-minded, but it wasn't just with them. It was across the board with other publications. Everywhere, in every meeting, they're like, how should we word this? How should we say this? Well, how would you want somebody to talk about you? That would always be my solution. So through that, again, I kept documenting the front lines, but I had an editor at the time, shout out to Rachel Curzius, who I remember us just sitting on a phone and just trying to figure out how are we going to tell these stories in Southeast DC. Aside from me, photographing the protests, my job was to focus on Ward 7 and Ward 8. And I remember me just saying, I'm tired of trying to interpret what everyone is saying. I'm tired of trying to explain to other writers, other reporters, other editors what my people are saying. How about we just give the people the mic and let them talk? We ask open-ended questions, learned that from trying to be a lawyer, and we just let them say what they need to say. And she gave me the green light. So through that conversation, I created an ongoing series called Voices of Ward 7 and 8, which is a monthly series where I literally create a topic, whatever the ancestors call me to create, to talk about, and I give the mic to my people, take a portrait of them. Through this internship, I was able to spend more time in Southeast DC, documenting Southeast DC, but this time I'm getting paid to do it, And I remember just learning more about my people, studying my people, right? Studying my people through a different lens, not just me as Dee, or, if you grew up with me, they call me Dee Dee. But I was able to put my journalist hat on, my storyteller's hat on, learn more, again, about the craft of storytelling, and just go deeper with it. I'm gonna go into, this is actually my mom's neighborhood. These are the kids out, they like to hang out outside. So sometimes I'll grab them up and tell them take a photo. They listen to me. But yeah, I just went around, during my off time, I'm photographing my community, I'm showing the pride in my community, and I'm doing it with love. I go through a few other photographs that I've taken over time. This is at an MLK parade. This is obviously a visual. So I go around, the community, I built up a solid reputation, from the people of just being that girl with the camera, being a woman with the camera, being, the visual voice for the people. That's what they call me. Through DCS, I'm able to tell stories of my community. I'm able to go deeper with my community. I'm able to learn more about my community. I learn something just about every single day about the community. I now, which I find very, how can I say this? Because I'm very raw, and I'm trying to not be so raw this early in the morning. But I find it surprising, kind of, that now those same editors who, skipped over a lot of my work from Southeast DC are now licensing my work. They recognize the importance of showcasing, or educating the world on Southeast DC. And I owe that, again, to the protesters who, fought to get me through those doors. I owe that to my people who allow me to tell their stories. One of my biggest projects, and it's an ongoing project, is documenting the bikers. I was able to collaborate with NPR and also Nat Geo, surprisingly. Whew. I remember me just like holding, thank you. Thank you. I remember doing that collaboration where they were like, we'll love to, publish the work of the bikers. And I remember me saying, is no way that this is going to go through. Something's going to happen, like the day that it's supposed to publish. Some big-time editor, above the editor that I was working with is going to pull this, because there's no way. We all know the bikers have a bad reputation. And again, the heart of my work is documenting the misunderstood, because I was always that misunderstood, child growing up. I'm still that misunderstood woman growing up. And I love it. I love it. I love that everyone doesn't quite understand who I am, or who my people is. It's a cultural thing for you to understand. So I appreciate that. At first I used to get so frustrated. Why don't you understand? Why don't you understand? Now I truly don't care. You either get it or you don't, but I'm still gonna be me. So this is my favorite photo of the bikers. This was a crazy day. This was crazy. Like, while I was taking this photo, it was literally a helicopter hovering over us. It was a big bus. After that, we were supposed to go biking or riding. They actually still went riding. I lost my ride, which, I'm not mad at it because he had to get away. But literally, like, cops just swarmed us. It was crazy. This was in Southeast. And this is actually, a monthly ride out that they do. So they go to different cities. It's not just in DC, by the way. The bike life culture is international. It's everywhere. A couple of months ago, I was able to go to Jamaica and spend time with them. Now I don't know about riding on the back of their bikes, because this is really throwback, and Jamaicans, they're very rough. But I remember this day, like they were, just coming together, and that's what I love about this community. Like people from all different walks of life. They come together, they meet at one meeting space, and they just ride out. There are gangs. I went to LA. There are literally gangs, Bloods and Crips, riding together, and that's their safe space. When they're riding in a pack, they know it's not any violence. Violence is not allowed. They have this motto where it's bikes up, guns down. So the police is chasing them and trying to lock them up and take away their bikes. But in my mind, and I remember me having a conversation with a police officer after this bus, and I remember me saying, do you even know, that they're actually helping you do your job? I understand that it's illegal for them to ride, in the streets, and I know, they can get a little wild with it. But these guys are extremely talented and extremely professional. And again, they're teaching the community to pick the bikes up and put the guns down. Now, of course, in every group, it's bad apples. We have that with the government, the police, with everything. But as a group, as a whole, I appreciate their values. I appreciate the morals that they're instilling within the people. So again, that's why I love to document the misunderstood, to educate people on who they are. And a lot of times they're riding with face masks on because, of course, they don't want to get recognized. It is illegal. And this is my information to keep in touch with me. I appreciate y'all time. I appreciate y'all for listening to my story. I could have went deeper, but y'all gonna have to stay tuned for my book.
It's funny, again, we always think we're not gonna have enough time, and then, remember what you said? You're like, oh, it'll be like 20 or 30 minutes. I won't say that much. And I was like, you're gonna have more to say. And, and here we are. So we have some time for some questions. I don't want to, okay, well, we're gonna just get started already. I was gonna say I don't want to dominate the question asking.
Thank you so much for this. As a recent transplant, I saw the bikes, but I never knew that it was an organized thing. Can you flip back to one of the earlier collages, where there's I don't know if it's a woman or a man, but they're like doing like this.
Oh, okay.
Lower left. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can you tell me more about that picture, how you caught it, where it's located? You know, I just want to know the backstory.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. So I don't know if you've heard of an organization called, they're an abolitionist group called Harriet's Wildest Dreams. Yes, yes. So Harriet's Wildest Dreams, some of their core members, actually all of their core members used to be with Black Lives Matter DC, but they left that for, other reasons, and they started Harriet's Wildest Dreams. And they took a group of activists to Cambridge, Maryland, to learn about Harriet Tubman. And this was one of their interns. We were literally, actually they took mothers who had lost their children to gun violence. They took them there just as a healing trip. I've worked with their members for many years now, and I was invited on this trip to document their experience there. And this was in partnership with Eaton Hotel. So while I was there, we were on this, I don't know, it was like a rocky, pathway. And this was the end of the trip. We were playing around. The interns, they had great vibes, great energy. And I remember taking portraits of the mothers. And I looked and I said, oh no, the mothers, they had gone on to eat, and I was left with the interns. We were joking, playing music. And we just, pumped each other up to do these outrageous poses. I directed one of the interns, and I said, girl, I need you up on those rocks. We had the music going, and we just was vibing out. So that's how I got that moment. We were being playful. Yeah.
I didn't see any other hands. I knew there were others, but.
Why did you choose black and white? Is that how you've been all your career, or was that an influence, or what was that about?
So I love black and white because it's timeless. I also do color as well, but I love black and white because it's timeless. What irritated me was whenever I would show my work, people would talk about, people's clothes, oh, wow, they would go straight to that. And I'm like, are you focusing on what this photograph means? Do you even understand what's happening here? You're talking about shoes. Even, my students, they would be like, their shoes don't match with their pants. And I'm like, don't focus on that. That's not important right now. And they would start joning. We call it joning here in DC. And I remember studying Gordon Parks and learning about why he loved black and white photographs. And I felt the same way. So I said, you know what? I'm tired of explaining why this person's, shirt doesn't match their pants. Focus on what's happening, the message. So I wanted to do black and white. And plus, it's timeless. You don't know if I took the photograph yesterday or 10 years from now. You just don't know. You focus on what's happening. So that's why I love black and white. But I also do color, for my commercial clients and all of that. I also do commercial work too. So shout out to that because they pay the big bills. Yes.
Dee, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You mentioned Howard, And you were going to say
Oh,
something.
yes.
Not
See,
that I went to Howard, just
Thank you
saying.
so much. Yes, it's that mommy brain, morning brain, all of that. So Howard, I wanted to go to Howard, and I remember over the years, whenever I would just, see people, especially Howard folks, being so prideful, I remember just like having a little regret deep down inside, like that. Like I should have took that opportunity to apply, because my aunt had worked for Howard, and I could have went there full ride for free, because during my senior year we had to do something. DC has school zoning and everything. I had got kicked out of just about every school that I went to, and I remember my parents just trying to save me. So my aunt had to get custody so that I can go to Cardozo, which is out of Southeast Uptown, and because of that, I could have went to Howard if I was accepted, full ride. And I remember just having regret over the years, dag, especially, looking at my credit score and looking at all that debt. I'm like, dag, I probably shouldn't have done that. And it wasn't until recently, I was on a trip in LA. I just needed to get away from DC. It was too much. I got a call from Howard University. And they were just like, we want you to be the visual journalist professor or lecturer, but the streets gonna call me professor. Whatever. For this upcoming semester. So I start next week. I will be teaching visual journalism. Yes. So that was a full circle moment. Everything is full circle. So actually after this I have an orientation. Yeah.
We got two more.
Hey, so you started taking photos for fun, and now you do it for organizations around town. Do you still bring your camera around for a lot of unplanned photos that end up going to these publications? Do you still kid around, or do you have more of an intention when you bring your camera out now?
It's both. I remember when I first started, I would take my camera everywhere I went. I don't care if I went to the corner to the ice cream truck. I was like, I gotta take my camera. But now I'm, I have a nice body of work where I'll take my camera out with me probably, 3 times or 4 times a week instead of all 7 days. So definitely I learned to shoot with intention, especially, through my mentor. I met my mentor through Jamil Shabazz. Is anyone familiar with Jamil Shabazz? Yeah, I met my mentor, Howard Cash, who actually mentored him. And Howard literally got me prepared for all these moments that I'm having. In 2019, I met him before my career took off, and he taught me how to go out and shoot with intention. Just challenging me. So now that's how I move. And I listen to my spirit now. Sometimes, my spirit is like, girl, put the camera down and just relax. It's gonna be okay, So I've learned to do that. Whereas before I was so eager and I was just like, I have to bring my camera out if, something may happen today. Now it's like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I've followed your work for some time now.
Thank you.
And let me tell you, this is how you know that I love you, because I showed up. I showed up at 8:30 this morning.
I showed up at 8:30 this morning too. I was trying to get out of it with Obi. I said, Obi, normally I'm a little bit more hype. I hope I did good today, y'all. The mornings is, woo.
So my question is, you mentioned the editor from the Washington Post that really honed in on your work in Southeast, and that you were excited for that encouragement because that's what you wanted to do anyways. What was your hesitancy to lean into that from the beginning?
Just going through, hearing from other photographers too who were already established. They would tell me, you got to stop shooting so much black stuff because you're not going to be able to get in the door. That discouraged me a lot, although I still did it, but you know, and surprisingly and unfortunately, it was from other Black photographers, you know, and that's because it's been instilled in them that they had to play the game in order to get work. And also just going to portfolio reviews, and I'm really good, and I shout out to the hood for this, I'm really good with reading body language, because, you know, where I'm from, you have to learn how to read body language because it's part of survival skills, right? And I remember just how editors would, you know, their bodies would shift whenever they get to that work, like it was uncomfortable for them. And I sensed that. So I was just like, Dad, I'm never gonna get an assignment, you know, if I keep shooting this. But I did, I kept doing it. But again, I would probably put like 10% of my selfies work in there, just a splash, just a hint. And people would skip over it, you know, or again, I would sense them being uncomfortable. So that was my hesitation. I just want to say shout out to Dudley Brooks for validating me, because he's very respected, like extremely respected in the industry. Everyone, like people don't play with Dudley. And he's been around for over 30 years in this industry. So to hear that from him, I can't thank him enough, because I feel happy, I'm comfortable. And now everyone's licensing my work. Everyone wants a piece of selfie. Southside is what we call it. So shout out to Dudley. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dee, for your time, for your heart, for your vulnerability. We really appreciate having you here. Yeah. As always, we've come to the end of this event, sadly. I just remember the first time we spoke, actually, was you hit me up for Voices of Ward 7. And you want to talk about a lot of feelings there. My wife and I had just moved into Ward 7 and just bought a house in Ward 7. And Dee reaches out and she's like, yo, you want to do this thing? I was like, no, not really. And in part because fun fact, I am Black. Also fun fact, Black people can be gentrifiers too. And I was, right? I'm not from here, it's not my neighborhood. We bought our house from a family who had lived there for 1.5 generations. And now Dee, someone who's very, very proud of their community, is coming and asking me what I think about the community. And it was tough. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to answer. But one of the things that I love about the way that you move in the world is that your pride is a pride rooted in who you are and your strength and the strength of your community, and not rooted in making other communities feel small. You're honest about what you believe and how you believe that to be true, but as someone, quite frankly, who, you know, you were a stranger to me at first, and then, you know, here you are interviewing me as someone who was identifying himself as being an outsider in a community that does look like me, but our experiences are very, very different. You made it possible for me to understand how to, with care, make this place my home, and understand this place better as my home, and understand myself in that place. And all that's to say is I think that one of the reasons pride is misunderstood is that oftentimes we move with our pride to make other people smaller and to make other people's pride less proud. If we can just sort of learn to operate in the fullness of who we are and the confidence of that, regardless of who's in front of us. Dee's been doing Dee since before the Washington Post was interested in what Dee's been doing. That consistency, that commitment to self and place and home, and honesty and telling these stories in a true way is remarkable. I think it makes it possible for us to exist in a city like this. We learn from you, we honor you, we thank you.